Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Roig-Francolí, your host. I'm the creator of The Art of Freedom for Conscious Living and Masterful Artistry. And I'm also the host of the Facebook group, the Mind Body Spirit Tribe for Musicians. In this video, I am going to be talking about the one thing, the only thing that you need, absolutely need, it's absolutely essential for you to be able to improve any and every aspect of your technique as a musician. Now, yes, that is a huge claim, but as a professional violinist myself and certified Alexander technique teacher, I can attest to the fact that it is absolutely possible to improve every aspect of your technique as a musician by paying attention to this one thing. So I want to welcome everybody who's here on with me. Hello. And if you could just say hello in the comments, that would be great. It would be so nice to know who's here and have a chat here. Hello, Adisha. And it's just nice to have a conversation going that's not just one way. I love these live videos on Facebook, but it's so much more fun if I can hear back from everybody. So please, as you're coming on, just say hi, and you can have your conversations amongst yourselves over there. And I do always check the comments afterwards the best I can, and I want to know what you have to think about everything that I'm presenting here. So hello, Marjolaine. I just see that you're coming on. Great to have you back. And Dana was looking forward to this. So I'm really happy you're here. You found the video. That's great. So, big thing. What is this one thing? By the way, I would love to know what everybody's instrument is. So if you want to type in what your instrument is, that would be great. Also, other people can see, who's here and what your interests are. Hello, Julia from Wales. Wonderful to have you here. So, here's the thing. We all want to improve our technique, right? Put a yes in the comments or thumbs up. Do you want to improve your instrumental technique? I know I do. Is it frustrating if you feel like you're hitting up against a wall every time you're trying to do something? I know there are a lot of string players here, and perhaps you're frustrated with your vibrato, or there's something about your bowing technique that you wish were different or better. Maybe there are certain passages in certain pieces that you just can't play. I know for me, there are pieces out there that I wonder if I'll ever be able to play before I die. Like Errants's Last Rose of Summer, if you're a violinist, like you probably know. I actually don't care if I can never play that before I die, but there's always room for improvement is my point. And, even in the simplest pieces, I could play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star today, and I would find room for improvement in my technique, I guarantee you. So we all know that there are things that we can improve, and as a musician, I know there are things that you wish you could do that you can't do right now. Am I right? Or am I right? Hi, Olga. Hi, Kay. Thanks for coming. Okay, so now that we've established that we are musicians and we want to get better with our technique, I have a question for you. What is the common denominator between every single aspect of instrumental technique on the planet for your instrument or any instrument? What's the one common denominator? Anybody know? There are some of my students here. You probably know. Actually, you all know, but you may not think of it right away because it's not something that most people talk about. I have a slightly different perspective. It's not slightly. I have a hugely different perspective from most instrumentalists or music educators, simply because, in a sense, I did leave my musical path when I was 20. When I was a teenager, I was winning international competitions, performing as a soloist with international orchestras, being very successful. And long story short, I dropped those ambitions, changed course, and I'm kind of coming full circle now over a long journey of decades to come back. And it's just really interesting how, having left, and for 3 years I did an Alexander Technique teacher certification program. That's 1,600 hours of training over 3 years. It's very intense to learn how to teach the Alexander Technique in a traditional program that requires those 1,600 hours. But in doing that, I was able to kind of look at the musical world from the outside, so to speak. I was still playing, I was still performing in orchestras and doing gigs and things, but my heart wasn't really in it, and I was kind of doing it to make money, and I really didn't care at all. And I'm not exaggerating. I didn't care at all about improving my technique or anything about my musicianship. I basically just did the minimum to be able to play to my minimum standard for the gigs so that I didn't feel bad about how I was playing. But I didn't practice for months at a time and was okay with that because I was out of that world and into a completely different paradigm. I was also more interested in a spiritual way of looking at life, which is unrelated to the Alexander Technique. So looking at the musical world from the outside allowed me to see things about it that I never would have seen from inside it. It's like it's like, how often do we think about the air, but we're breathing it 24/7. We're in it. We don't think about the air very often, unless there's something about it, like it's very poor air quality, it's polluted, or something about it stands out as unusual. Or it's like a fish in water, doesn't know it's in water. So this thing that is the common denominator amongst all musicians, all instruments, all instrumental technique, this one thing. Let me see, I'm going to go over to the comments. I'm not going to say it because maybe somebody else said it here. Did somebody say? Jess said ease, you're close. Olga says mindset, you're close. Dana says relaxation, you're close. You're all touching on aspects of this one thing. Yes, and Adisha says trusting our abilities, ease. Yes, you're close too. Yes, so you're all talking about the thing, but here's the answer. I'm sure you're all like, are you dying to know what this one thing is? Should I make you wait? No. Okay, so the one common denominator is this self. The mind, body, soul, spirit, self. You are the common denominator. So, the title of this video is the one thing you need to improve every single aspect of your technique. That one thing, you have to know how to improve the use of your self. Because absolutely guaranteed, 100% guaranteed, how few things in life are 100% guaranteed. This is one of those few things. It is guaranteed that every aspect of your music making, of your technique, your expression, your musicianship, every aspect improves when you are improving the use of yourself. This is my primary instrument. This is my primary instrument of creative expression. My body that I live in, this voice I'm speaking with, the mind I'm thinking these words with, the emotions and the passion that I'm expressing them with, the spirit that's in it that allows me to convey these ideas to you. That's this mind, body, soul, spirit, self. Ideas are being expressed through this primary instrument so that you receive what it is that I'm expressing. Now, if I don't know anything about how to use this mind-body self, I might have naturally beautiful coordination and integration in my system. We're all born with it. And I may have grown up without interfering with it, and there may be very little tension. But that's not the case. I have pictures of myself as a teenager, and I'm like this. My friend and I used to go out for coffee, or tea at that point. I didn't like coffee at that point. I do now, for better or for worse. But we used to get together for tea. We'd look at each other and say, oh, we need to work on our posture. So then we would do this, and we'd try to have good posture, and that would last about 20 seconds, and then we'd be back to this. Okay? So children, babies, toddlers are born with a natural integration, a natural sense of self, and things work in the absence of injury or disease, of course. They are naturally coordinated and naturally expressive. They don't prevent themselves from saying things. They don't stop themselves from crying because it might not be appropriate when they're 2. They just scream if they want a cookie, right? They don't have that interference with their natural self-expression that we have learned over a lifetime to clamp down on ourselves. We were taught how to interfere with the natural expression of this primary instrument. Over time, it happened to all of us. It's a natural human phenomenon. It happens thanks to the people that we imitate when we're growing up with, people who teach us, educational systems. The world around us tries to domesticate and tame us and fit us into molds. And we agree, we accept as children, we're very open. And we learn by imitating, we learn to do what is expected of us for survival, because if we don't, we may be abandoned and lose love and food. So we learn over time how to interfere with the good use of this mind, body, soul, spirit self. But we don't usually know we're doing it. Now, people interfere more or less with that natural sense of self, naturally integrated coordination. Some people learn to just continue. Maybe they have an easier childhood or a naturally easier temperament that they're born with, and their environment allows them to flower in the full self-expression with ease. There are people that have that lucky karma, so to speak, and they grow that way. Or maybe they're just born with a real knowledge or a sense of consciousness more than others, so that they are able to stave off the external negative influences in a way that not everybody can. There are all kinds of people in this universe. So going back to musicians, you can see some great musicians are so naturally beautifully coordinated, and you watch them play and you're like, well, how can they do that? They look so effortless. There's no tension in that person. Truth is, there are very few people like that, especially now in modern times. But I'm not going to go into that. I would digress like terribly if I went down that rabbit hole. But there are some people who just never lose that natural coordination, but most of us do. So most of us need to unlearn the tension that we've learned, the reactivity that we've learned, and the tamping down of our expression that has turned into anxiety and fear. Performance anxiety is a great example. Toddlers don't have performance anxiety, and they don't have back pain and neck pain either, right? Those things are reactions to our environment and also our internal thoughts. So my point here is that we all need to learn, to a greater or lesser degree, most of us greater, we need to learn how to coordinate ourselves, how to use the mind, body, self, how to do that. Because when we improve our natural coordination, improve isn't even really necessarily the right word. When we learn how to get the interference out of the way and return to a more natural design, which is beautiful integration and coordination, Then our ideas can be transmitted easily and powerfully through the body that is designed to play with force and power, but with power, but without forcing, right? If you're a pianist, you know you get the best sound when the whole self goes into that piano without forcing and trying to make a big sound, right? But you can't do that unless you know how to think in a very clear, focused way. You have to know what you want. You have to know your purpose. You have to know what goals you have. You have to know your ideals. You have to have the sound that you want to create. You have to work on creating what you want up here and get that more and more and more clear in your vision and your auditory vision, so to speak. That's the first thing. You have to have a very clear purpose, clear intention. And that's a skill. You need to learn how to do that. And most of us need a teacher to help with that specifically. That's one of the things that I specifically teach my students, my private coaching clients, and my students in my group Alexander Musicians class. Whether you're a professional, you've been playing for decades and decades, and you're at an elite level, there's always room for improvement. And this is where it starts. Clarifying what's going on up here, learning how to focus and not get thrown off track. That's where mindset, attitude, not getting carried away by emotions, negative feelings, fears, anxiety, criticism, judgment, all those things that make us veer off course. You need to know how to not let yourself do that. That's a skill, and most of us need to be taught that skill. Most of us haven't specifically and explicitly been taught that skill. We're just kind of expected to learn how to focus in a way that is positive and tension-free. Have you ever concentrated tension-free? That's rare, because most people, when they think of concentration, they furrow the brow and they get intense. And when you're intensely concentrated, there's tension that is introduced into your body. We need to learn how to concentrate in a super focused way, hyper alert and conscious of our internal and external worlds in a way that is open and free and flowing and not in tension, that kind of tension. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need as you're working on the so-called use of the self. By the way, the use of the self is a term, it's kind of jargon that is in the Alexander world. The use of the self is something that F.M. Alexander called how we use the mind-body self. And so I'll be using that now. I think it's a pretty easy to understand concept. A lot of people say, oh, well, we shouldn't use Alexander jargon. I was like, you guys aren't dumb. I think you can understand that we need to know how to use the mind. We need to know how to use the body. We need to know how to use the self. That's the use of the self. I think that's a no-brainer. So we need to learn how to use the self. And we need to learn how to use it well so that we can use this primary instrument and then add on the secondary instrument of, which is your musical instrument, or your pen. If you're writing, that's a secondary instrument also. We use tools to express ourselves in different ways, through sound, through words. But yeah, so what I teach is the use of the self and how to apply optimum use of the self to whatever activity that you want to improve, whatever technique you want to improve. Your vibrato gets better if you're using yourself in an intelligent and coordinated, smart way. To learn how to do that, then your vibrato improves just by itself without you even have to work at it. You don't have to work at your vibrato. And in fact, if you work at it and concentrate on it and try really hard, you'll have the experience that it's harder to make that work, right? Have you ever had this experience? Everybody put a yes out there if you've had this experience where you really want something, so you work really hard at it, but it just gets worse. And you're like, I'm working so hard at it. Why doesn't it get better? annoying when that happens, isn't it? So this art of freedom that I teach, which is largely based on, not exclusively, but largely based on the Alexander technique and the practical application of it, hands-free, which is called primal Alexander. That's Mio Morales' method for hands-free teaching. That's what I teach my students most of the time now. It is directly working on improving this itself so that your vibrato improves, your contact with the string improves, the force you get out of your piano improves, your rhythm improves, your sense of timing, your sense of phrasing, being able to be expressive without getting all tense in your body just because you're being passionate about something. You can be so on fire with passion and be free and powerful in your body. That tension just gets in the way and blocks your soulful expression. So this is the one thing that solves all the problems in your instrumental technique and everything else too, by the way. So I want to check over to the comments. Does this make sense to all of you? Does this make sense? I want to see your emojis popping up here and your yeses if this makes sense. Okay, great. So I have a question for everybody out there. Does this concept excite you? Does it excite you that there might actually be a key to make everything you do easier? If you play the piccolo, your piccolo playing can get easier if you just learn this one thing. Isn't that exciting? And Adisha says, yes, it makes sense. Good. I find it just so liberating to know that I don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours working on getting my tenths in the Izai Ballad in tune. I trust that over time, it's going to work itself out. And I know from experience, many years of experience. I've been practicing Alexander technique since 2003. So what's that, 17 years, I guess, that I've been in the Alexander world. And I've been teaching it for almost as long. So I know from experience that my violin playing improves even if I'm not touching my violin, even if I'm not thinking about my violin and I leave it for a few days or weeks or months. If I'm improving the use of myself, when I come back to that violin, things are easier, things work better, sounds better, my technique is easier. When I started paying attention to that, I started being able to play things that I couldn't play when I was a teenager at what was then the height of my abilities as a violinist. Now I play better, but it's interesting that it's been a very indirect process. And those tenths in the Izai, I don't have well, actually now I do have a deadline. But for a long time I didn't have a deadline to learn the line that I'm thinking of that has tenths and octaves, and it's a very challenging line in the Izai Ballad that I just couldn't play it for months and months, right? But then I applied my use of the self and clear practice techniques that are based on the Art of Freedom and Alexander technique that I teach my students, how to practice things in a way that's efficient and effective and fast so that you don't have to work at it. It just kind of effortlessly starts to emerge for you. And so I haven't stressed out about that line in the Izai. And I even didn't work on it for about a week last week because I was really working on my Bach Chaconne much more intently last week. I had a hair in my eye. But then I came back to the Izai a couple days ago and I played that passage and it was so much easier. Really, really, really gratifying to see yet again that this process works. So if you're excited about this, Olga says, very exciting. Olga says, that's why I now look forward to practicing. That wasn't the case in the past. And Olga is in my Alexander Musicians group class. So she knows that this stuff works, right? She's new to my world and the Art of Freedom, but she's been practicing it enough. And she's been doing the daily awareness etudes that I teach, which are super simple, but you do them twice a day for just a couple of minutes in the morning, a couple of minutes in the evening. Your progress is guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. So she knows it, and that's why she's excited with 3 exclamation points. And she looks forward to practicing now, and that wasn't the case before. I can say the same for myself. I used to hate practicing, and now I'm starting to actually look forward to it because it's a completely different way of thinking about everything. It's very, very, very different from what the typical music teacher is teaching, and it works so much better. So if anybody out there watching this is ready to learn about how to do this, how to improve the use of the self so that everything you do with your instrument gets easier by itself, are you ready for that? Type R into the comments. Even if you're watching the replay, if you're watching this 10 months from now, I want to see an R in the replay. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment R at the bottom if you're ready to learn more, and I will reach out to you and we can chat about, I have different options for different types of people. And what I mean by that is I work with people who play any instrument, not just violinists. And I work with professionals at the highest level. And I work with amateurs at a very, very, very basic beginner's level. I don't care what you play or how you play, because that's all secondary. What I care about is helping you improve the use of yourself. And that way, everything you do with your instrument works better, more easily. You learn how to get into flow. Things become more effortless. And not just in your music making, honestly. Things in every area of your life start to improve and get easier. So wouldn't it be nice if just by taking some group classes or doing some private coaching with me to improve your instrumental technique, every area of your life would also improve. Your relationships got easier. You became less reactive. You had a better control over your time. You could be more organized during the day. You had better time management skills. All of a sudden, your sex life improves because maybe that's something that you want. Right? I'm serious. Any area of your life that you would like to see an improvement in, it's possible when you improve the use of yourself. And it's not hard. In fact, it's so simple, it's hard to even believe that this is possible. But I swear to God, I've been doing this, like I said, for quite a few years now. And my life now, compared to how it was in 2003, is like night and day in pretty much every area of my life. It has like skyrocketed so much better. I'm such a happier person now. I have energy now. I was fatigued and kind of depressed earlier. And I found the Alexander technique in desperation because I had neck pain and I was really unhappy. And very quickly, once I stepped into the Alexander world with the teacher that I had, who was fantastic, I completely, everything started to open up and I started to see things differently. Everything started working better. And it wasn't until later that I started getting curious about applying all of that to my violin playing. But now, it's like I said earlier, my life is coming full circle. I'm working on a solo violin recording now, which is super exciting. That's what I'm playing the Isai and the Bach for. And I just love teaching this to people. So please type that R or type ready into the comments if you just are curious to learn more. No obligation whatsoever, but I would love to talk with you and see what could be most useful for you to start thinking about how you can access this incredible thing, which is natural, totally natural. We are designed to have optimum use of the self, but most of us have not been taught how to access that. Okay, that's what I've got for you today. I hope this was useful. And after I'm finished, I will hop back and check the comments, see if there are any questions. You can always ask me questions in the comments. I don't see anything. Oh, that is so funny. I'm seeing this. Adisha says we sound like pirates. I love that. With all the R's popping up. That's great. Oh, yes, before I leave, I just have to see Jane says R. Jessica, I assume there's an R there. It just looks blank. And Dana R. Adisha R. Yes, you're right. We sound like pirates in a good way. Like, Yes, we are going to steal the day in the best possible way. So have a great one. See you next Monday. And I'll be in touch with everybody who put an R out there, either today, hopefully today, definitely today. I'll make sure I do it today. So I'll be chatting with you individually later. Lots of love, be well, and enjoy yourself. Bye.